You can't have missed it last week, but Elena's back this week. I tell you what, her and I got on really, really well last week, and it was really good fun. I enjoyed it. Did you?
I did. I had a great time.
Yeah, well, we need to get... I reckon we can draw a lot more out of you than this, but what I did, folks, is that I sent Elena away. We said, look, if you can think of any subject matter, do it. And that's what I appreciate about you, because I've done that to other people, and they go, yeah, right, I'll think about it, and I'll get back to you. No one does anything. Elena... You should see this list. You know, you're not going to be able to read it there, so I'm not showing you. But she's made a list of about 3 different sessions here of subject matter that is really provocative. So
It's just subject matter I'm smart enough to talk about. That's all. There's other topics, I'm sure, out there in the world, but they're not.
Well,
my
wait
area.
for this one, folks. The struggles of youth. Dun, 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 dun.
In New Zealand.
Oh, in New Zealand. I've got to
Yes.
read the words. Read the
Yes.
words. God, I'll get told off.
Well, it's just I've lived through it, so of course.
So this will be good fun because, you know, in my age, you guys couldn't get it easier. We've set it all up for you. You got it nice. Everything's going smoothly. And we've just set the path for you. You know, we hacked the path, the bush. We got the machete and took down the trees so you had a nice, smooth path. But no, you want it tar sealed. And you want street lights put in it. And also, maybe you shouldn't have to walk. You probably want a free ride as well. In fact, why even take the journey? Take a video.
Yeah.
And sit at home with a
No.
warm fire.
No. I think from our perspective, you might have laid the groundwork, but you also left a lot of people without the ability to walk through that, to go into that groundwork. So where before things were connections and it was okay to go into something and just try it out and see if you can make a success out of it. Now you have to be an expert before, you know, you put your brand label on something. And it's
You're saying we haven't prepared your generation with resilience. That's
Definitely.
a big word right now.
Definitely.
Do you know what I'm seeing a lot of is, I think you might be right in some degree, because well, a dear friend of mine who does, he works in the Maori area, but he is a whole course on resilience. So it's building resilience not just for mental health, but for other factors as well, physical. But I mean, your generation right into this physical stuff more than mine would have been. But you know, but there's that mental side of it's quite good, and also academically, you guys are going hard at it. You're, I mean, this generation seem to think that academic background is really important rather than. And where we've let you down is the trades, where I was put through an apprenticeship as a teenager. At the age of 16, I left school, went and did a trade, apprenticeship. Whereas in your generation, anyone doing an apprenticeship, well, on the status symbol, you're way down there. You know, you're just doing an apprenticeship. You're just a tradie. That's what I read it. Am I reading it as you would?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack in that. I think that because when you were setting up the groundwork and you were doing things, a lot of people didn't have the academic
Correct, yeah.
courses in place for a lot of the things that are prevalent now. And the academics became quite important because it was proof to future employers that you have what it takes for that industry. But the academic industry sort of became a paper-pushing activity. Because I remember school, and it's probably not wise to say this, but I was doing things the night before. I was studying I opened my textbooks for a couple of the subjects the night before for the first time.
You're not the first one, and it happens today, for goodness sake.
And it's because it was rote memorization.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, in at least a couple of the courses that I took, I do not remember a single thing from it. And a lot of business owners are the same.
Oh, in my generation, it was rote learning too.
Yeah.
And I remember the alphabet because we use it every day, and how to count, some mathematics, and the equations, yeah, I mean, are gone.
Yeah. And it's great if you want to go into the academic field. And it's very good if you want to go into medicines and things, because it's a huge part of just having that knowledge base behind you. But for a lot of other things, it's just being able to keep your ear to the ground and understanding where the world is headed. And for the most part, street smarts and having that real life experience is probably, I'm not going to say more important, but just as important as having the knowledge base, because the knowledge base tells you what you're looking for, and the street smarts and the connections tell you where you're looking. So, I mean, I do think that there needs to be a huge amount of education reform in the university sectors, because it's not their fault that they're doing it that way. When you're looking at top universities in the world, it's those that can push those papers and those theses through, and not those who create entrepreneurs or street smarts or the ability to learn in the future.
You know, in my view, I think a lot of this, it is our fault in a lot of way, our generation, because we probably don't even appreciate it. But if we reflect on our own childhood, we look at our parents for guidance, and we wouldn't have told them in our teens that they were guiding us in terms of which direction we need to take. And that's where our generation missed that as well, because we don't realise what influence we do have over you. And what I'm going back to is, we did let you down because we put so much emphasis on getting an academic background that most kids leaving school think they've got to be a lawyer or an accountant. And look, I'm exaggerating, but that's generally, that academic level is what you should be expecting your child to achieve, which is not right. And we're learning that now. We should have, hey, if you're not up to that academic stuff, then you should be looking at a trade, and with pride, and be proud to be a tradesperson.
I think that's a lot more complicated than it sounds, because a lot of people who get pushed, a lot of kids who get pushed by their parents into accounting or law or medicine, they're not getting pushed there because of the academic component. They're getting pushed there for stability. So immigrant families generally push their kids for those big three because they're recession-proof and they're connection-proof. You don't need to know the right people in order to go into this venture. You just need to be good and knowledgeable about the area. And regardless of what happens in the world, you are going to need a lawyer, and you are going to need an accountant, and a doctor. And it makes them quite recession-proof and
well, there's
stable.
A couple of factors here I see, because not only is it parents have huge influence, but do you know what the other factor is? And I'm using the word Hollywood, but certainly it's the movies that we're producing. And that affects the culture of our whole society. And I knew it in my day. It was like cowboys and Indians, if you like, in my day. But certainly today it's more like cops and robbers and shoot 'em out. And it's always the smart guy who's got the intellect a little bit higher than the other, and he's got physical attributes, which I think is absolutely pathetic, like Superman, to go beyond it. But those are the attributes that people aspire to have nowadays, is to be smarter and also have physical capabilities beyond other people.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with the careers you pick? Some of the most intelligent people on the planet are people who started out as just with the intelligence to explore, to go into different things.
I actually think it has a lot to do with it. I think it affects from childhood on. I think that's why there's a lot of attraction to gangs, because being smart, being physically strong, having people fear you, things like that are highly attractive to a young person. And wealth, and extreme wealth, where you can buy the jewellery, you'll get the flash car, you got the motorbike, and people admire you for it, and I think that's what they aspire to be. Now, what can't we change that model somehow? And if our movies could do it, and the parents could do it, and say, inspire to be creative, or inspire to be, something unique in this world. You don't have to follow the game, and go with that. And actually, wealth's not everything. You could actually be successful as a poor person if you do so and so and so and so. We ought to admire people on a different sort of category than we do now.
Yeah, but when you're looking at the people who want to go into gangs for the wealth that you'd get from the top tier business folks, it's important to note why they want to go into that area. It's a lack of support from families. It is not knowing any better because that's just the environment that you grew up in. It's a series of bad decisions that led you to feel like you can't have a way out, and that's the only way to get there. It's not really to do with what media kind of shows it as. At least I don't think so.
Here's a challenge to you, Elena, because you've done something different. There's not many people your age and your stage of life who've successfully created and run a business, and you've done that. What motivated you to do that?
I had inbuilt resilience from my background. So we moved from Eastern Europe because it's hard to live there, and of course what's happening in the news is a clear indication of
Yeah,
how
but I mean,
horrible it is.
but in Russia and around that area, they've had generations of war, generations of slaughtering and maiming. You guys have been through hell. Us in New Zealand, we just have a sweet life. No one worries us, and no one challenges us hardly. We think domestic violence is bad, which it is, but that's as rough as it gets here. Whereas you,
Well, I think that's the point.
your gang violence over there's a war. You know.
Just based on what COVID caused and inflation and the fact that we're headed towards another 2008, we very rarely have real problems come to our shores. And when you live every day in problems, your perspective skews.
So getting back to you then, do you think that your background, I mean, you've said it actually, haven't you? Your background has made you think differently than the average Kiwi, say.
Yeah, well, my family immigrated, and we did as a unit, and I like to think that I was part of that because I also had to learn from the ground up, including the English language at a very late age. And it's difficult because you come in with no connections. You don't even come in with the English language. You come in with some small savings and what you have on the back of your, on your shirt, on your clothes. And when that's sort of your starting point, there's only one way to go, which is up and to seek stability and to make a place for yourself in New Zealand. And you do get resilient.
You realise you've done it wrong.
How so?
This is New Zealand culture. Because you're creating a business, you could end up very, very wealthy. And New Zealand's got this syndrome called tall poppy. And Australia's bad for it as well. So the more successful you are in business or wealth, you're going to get beaten up by the average person who will, not to your face, behind your back, demean you because, God, look at them.
Oh, to your face. I've got a friend who's starting a small foods business, and his landlord went up and said, "Hey, I don't think you're going to do well. Just letting you know. If a friend who does the same thing, you're not going to do well." To his face. I mean, that's just... It's not fair.
No.
It's not fair.
It's a put down.
It is, and it's when you're first starting out, it's a pretty crucial moment because you start gathering information from people and trying to figure out if it is feasible. And then you have a choice. You either listen to those who say it's not going to work, or you ignore them and you create...
What would you do if you were confronted with it? I know what you would do.
I never asked anyone. I just started.
Well, even if you were told. I would deem that a challenge. Righto, brother,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how wrong you were.
Yep. And that's actually a big reason of why I decided to go for being my own business owner. Because I know that if someone told me point blank just to do something, or that I was doing something wrong because, I just do it my way anyway. And
Now,
that's...
I had a mentor when I was younger. He's now died, but he made extreme wealth. So I hung in with him because I love that sort of thing too. You and I are both unique. I think we have something in common here. And the chairman of his board, who guided them, he had good wisdom, guided them through, helped navigate them through some difficult times into extreme wealth. And he said to me once, we were drinking, as there was a lot in those days, "Max, you'll never be wealthy," because he knew I inspired. And I was modelling myself on John, the successful business guy. He said, "You'll never be." And he said, "Do you know why your problem is?" He said, "No." He said, "You're far too kind." And do you know what? I think he's right. But who the hell wants to be wealthy? You know, is that really success? You can be wealthy but despised. Or do you want to be liked and average? I don't know. Where is your aspiration?
Wealthy is a sliding scale. Like, do I want to be Jeff Bezos wealthy? Everyone does. But for me, and running a business, I'm looking to gain independence. I'm looking that if, God forbid, we end up in a lawsuit or we need medical care or something, I don't feel like my world is ended because I have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I want to get to a comfortable position where I can up and decide, yeah, I'm just going to go and travel Europe, you know, and I don't need to do it on a private yacht, but just having the flexibility to buy a plane ticket and go for a couple of weeks. And that's what I'm striving for, but that's a life goal for me.
Here's a big statement, big question. Do you think New Zealand's tall poppy syndrome is causing harm to our society?
Absolutely.
I would agree.
I think that the tall poppy syndrome comes from the fact that we are all psychologically programmed to protect our cages.
It's interesting. I'm going to mention two names here, and I guarantee, I don't know how you feel about him, but Elon Musk, you know, he is top of the world right now, and one of the most successful business people and wise brains out there. And the other one right now in New Zealand here was .com. .com generously put on the biggest fireworks display we've ever seen in that, and he gifted it to the city. And in response, he's been hated and despised ever since, for a myriad of reasons. But what I'm saying is, in other countries, they would actually, a lot of people, Elon Musk, I think is just an incredible bloke. I really do. He's got his faults, but the automatic reaction in New Zealand, and folks, you tell me if I'm wrong, would be to put him down.
I wouldn't put him down, and I agree with you.
Good,
but
thank you.
I had a friend tell me, we were just having a conversation, a group of us, and I was just talking about how I needed to purchase a new car because I had car issues and all this other stuff, and we were talking money, and she looked at me kind of comfortably, and she's like, you're talking in the thousands. I have, you know, $400-ish in my bank account, and like, I don't really, you know, and I said, she said, I'm not as successful as you, and I kind of went, I'm not successful. I just work 14 hours a day for the last 11 years. Like, statistically, something was bound to go right when you work that hard for that long. And it's the same thing that Elon Musk said. It's his, like, probably going to be one of his most famous quotes, which is, I work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and people still call me successful.
And,
you know?
And look, his colleagues and people who have followed him say that it's true. He locks himself into a project and there's no moving him. No. He's pig-headed.
He couch surfs because he knows that he has no use for home.
So, I would let's get to the bottom of this tall poppy thing, because I think you and I are agreeing, so we probably can move on. It's damaging. It's doing our society wrong. Would you agree that the causes of the damage to our society is the lack of entrepreneurs and the lack of support for entrepreneurs?
No. I think that tall poppy is damaging in the sense that people are very against trying to explore the rest of the world. I think that New Zealand feels that if they invite the rest of the world in, it's going to create competition, it's going to create the ruination of New Zealand culture, which is, it's just not true. I think if you can appreciate other cultures, you will appreciate yours more. And I think that if you invite the skilled workforce, or you invite the rest of the world to appreciate how amazing New Zealand is, then you will be able to see the best of the other cultures as well. Because no one's saying you have to work 14 hours a day.
Do you know, Elena, that's very, very wise. It's a very sage comment, I've got to say. I'm very impressed. I tell you why, because in 1977, I left a small little country town called Eltham in Taranaki, and to me, that was the hub of the world. The world revolved around us. I just couldn't understand why, you know, the TV was not down in Eltham every day. The news, why weren't they? Because it was the hub of the world in my world. Then I travelled to Auckland for a day. I went to the Automobile Museum and then flew to LA and got off the plane when, jeepers, I was 23. Wore my cowboy gear, and I had a denim shirt and things like that. And look, the experience I had there, I can't share with you, but oh my God, that night was incredible for me. And then travelled to London and then worked up in the North Sea oil. Now, you are so right, because I worked with multiple nationalities in the North Sea oil. It was ruthless, hard work. It was dangerous. A couple of people died on the rig I was on. There was lots of shit going down, but it was exciting for a young guy. And man, did I have a different outlook on New Zealand. I used to almost apologise for coming from a little country town like in Eltham and realizing that New Zealand's just really a little farming community and it's not that important. When I came back here, I could tell it was a beautiful country. It's away from the terrible humdrum. So I'm just saying, agreeing with you. You're
There's
right.
nothing
You have a
wrong
different
with coming.
perspective.
There's nothing wrong with coming from a little town, and there's nothing wrong with wanting your big plot of land or your boat and just spending the time relaxing. And if anything, you live happier lives than a lot of those that grunge in big cities. But you are allowed. You should be allowed to go up to friends and say, "Oh, I went to this art museum in Europe, and we saw Van Gogh's latest painting," without having someone kind of look at you and cringe and say, "Well, it's not New Zealand. Why was this relevant to me?" There's plenty of New Zealand artists, but you can only appreciate them when you appreciate their position in the world. And that's sort of my view on the tall poppy. I think we're just afraid of acknowledging our limitations.
All right, let's move on a little bit. Youth of this world and the struggles they have. What about work? So do you think the opportunities are there for the youth of this generation, your generation, or even coming behind you?
I think that there is going to be, or there is already, huge shifts in what's valued in the workforce. I know that from my business, because we do administration and flexible human resource, and with things getting more and more automated, the need for a full-time position in that role is becoming less and less. I do think that in New Zealand specifically, we really need to figure out how to keep our youth here, and a very big part of my dislike with the current government is that by shutting the borders effectively, which is what they're aiming with all the steps that they're taking to do, they're removing the life that comes with New Zealand. So people are always going to want to come back home, but they also want to explore other cultures, other people. Especially with a country this small, it would be nice to see new people and have new conversations and explore the world through the eyes of the different people that come in. And there's very little reason to stay for people who are looking to live, to go to parties, to have late nights, to have nights that never stop. And we don't have the population to sustain that.
Well, I deal with the employment area, employment law, but what I've seen in the last 2 years is just incredible. And I think people are realising it now, but for me, I see it close up because the whole workplace has evolved enormously since we've had COVID-19, and people don't want to work from home. Employers are in a hurry now, and business owners are in a hurry now to automate it, get that, so we don't actually have the problems of staff. Those phenomena are occurring at a rapid pace, and we were forced into it with COVID, and we're getting, hey, maybe this is not so bad after all. So that dynamics is changing dramatically. Now, for your generation, the opportunities of picking up a labouring work or a bit of administration work on a typewriter, which would have been in my day, is just disappearing, vaporising very, very quickly. But there are other opportunities starting up. My generation have no idea how to create an app or a web page.
True. Sorry, but true.
Whereas you told that as ABC, it's primary school.
I think the roles aren't disappearing. I think the roles are disappearing in a full-time capacity. So I have actually gotten a lot busier since COVID happened, because people can't justify having someone do it full-time, but they can justify having someone do it flexi-time. And my staff work full-time because they have 4 or 5, 6 clients under their belts, which is sort of where I think the future is going for that. It's not that there's less of the same roles available because the automations are removing that time constraint, but I don't think they're disappearing completely.
I was on a World Symposium the other day, and it was Canada, Britain, USA, and a European country, all us together, and I represented New Zealand. Now, we were unique in New Zealand because we're a contractual, we're a nation of contractors. So a lot of small businesses, 93%, 97% of all enterprises in New Zealand have less than 20 staff. That's unique. But do you want I picked up? I was listening to them intently. Particular woman that was there from where was she from? New York, and she was saying more and more coloured women were getting into starting their own businesses, and then contracting themselves in. And I'm listening to this and going, God, we did that years ago, and we're doing it more and more. You know, and just to hear what you said then, I think there's another term that's very commonly used out there called the gig culture, the gig workplace, the gig, and you do a project and you move on. It's not full time anymore, and people are embracing that and quite like it because, hey, I want a break. You know, I don't want to work next month, so I might do a couple of mega projects. Maybe it's paying quite well. I'm comfortable, so I'll just take next month off. I'm not looking to aspire to get wealthy, and do it. And that's the lifestyle that your generation seem to be bringing to it and want that.
Yes, but I think it depends on what they're being contracted out to do. I think that anything that's a one-off project is usually charged more, and we end up paying the
that's true.
The
it
extra.
Does cost more.
And
productivity's greater.
I think it just removes the bad staff, if that makes sense. People who contract out have to be very sure of the skills that they're offering, and they have to be very able, and they can't. The standard under promise over deliver is sort of what applies, and I think that.
Now, those are words that a lot of the viewers here won't understand, but you in business do understand. You've got to have the quality. You've got to get a reputation up of being able to deliver on time and good quality.
Yeah, and more importantly, you have to want them to ask you back.
Yeah.
Because even if you're only doing one project, that's not the only project they'll ever have.
And that's why reputation is really important, and that's why I think you've got an understanding of that. But going back to it, it's the dynamics have changed, and I think your generation are embracing it better than ours did. We expected a 40-hour week, 9 to 5, work your job and go home, and people got bored, hated their job, but went because there was nothing else. Whereas today, the good thing for the workplace is there's not enough workers, so they can pick and choose now. Whereas in my old day, you were lucky to get a job.
I think that with automations rapidly growing the way they are, we're soon going to end up with people still looking for jobs, because you need to be either someone able to create the automations, fix them, or have such a need in the business that your job won't be made redundant just because automations are in place.
Well, let's look at the future. So it's automation, so that's digital skills. So we're looking at robotics, which are huge, and I guess it's just general communication technology and things like that, which is just where you guys are so advanced, in my perspective, and we're not.
There's different levels of advance.
And I tell you what, there was a time when we used to, you know this better than anybody, we would IT people, yeah, right, they're dime a dozen. You can't get them now, and when you get one, you've got to pay a fortune for it, because they are so damn valuable, and you could have them in your workplace all day creating automation for you. There you go. And your generation could capitalize on this by maximizing, but not everyone's got those skills, have they?
IT has carved itself a place in the world, and like every profession, it's got levels and tiers. Automations is probably one of the higher level tiers, and then strategies and things. I'm not too familiar with that hierarchy, but you still can get someone who specializes in only one area, which is still sort of a bottom tier, and you can still get someone who which is actually at the admin level, can help with emails and signatures and automating through existing apps.
But not everybody has the natural ability to be able to program and put together the digital, concept, and to put together an app. And it's some people have got a
I
gift for it.
disagree with that.
Or do you think everyone can do it?
I think everyone can do it. I think it's the same skill set that you'd have to learn if you were doing stocks and finance, or if you were doing marketing. It has its own jargon, it has its own way of thinking, and it has its own limitations or blinders with regards to other industries. But just like any other industry, you can learn it.
So, Elena, next door, there is 7 units getting built. They're 3 stories tall. There's a big wall of them. And I suspect they're all Chinese people over there. My God, their skills are incredible. I would love watching them. And there's a girl in there. There's a whole lot of guys working there. The girls right up there at the school level as well. I watch them, and man, can they work. But not everyone's designed to build houses. And that's where I admire them. They're strong, they're fit. They're in there, even in dusk when there's hardly any light, they're still up there working. They don't mind working hard. And it sounds as though I can't understand what they're saying because they're right next door and I can very close to them. They're having fun. They knuckle down. They're not laughing all the time, but they're gibbering to each other, and it looks like they're really intrigued with their own work. What I'm saying is, those are digital skills, those are practical skills. These are a generation which is probably, I don't know, they're probably 10, 20 years older than you, I'm guessing. But and that girl would probably be your age, but by God, she can stand her own. There was an argument over there one day, and by God, she sorted it out. And I don't know I couldn't understand a word, but I thought there was going to be a punch up for a while. But she sorted it, so good on her. But what I'm saying is, these again, it's different skills, different techniques. And look, I think we ought to be. Not everyone needs to be an IT person, do they? And we do need builders. We do need someone who can do the practical work, and drivers and things like that. At this stage, we need drivers.
You're talking about two different things. You're talking about love of what you're doing and being able to learn a skill. You can still learn something technical even if you're a creative person. It'll help make your creative side better. You can still understand certain things that you can do on computers because it'll help your day-to-day life. Two different things. You can learn any skill with enough hard work.
Well, my daughter is 22, so when she was leaving high school to go into the next stage, we went to a careers night, and that was incredible. They said, whatever you do, kids, don't listen to your parents. They haven't got a clue, because they're what they understood as work is different to what you've got to have. The other thing is, be prepared between 3 and 5 different careers in a lifetime. Now, I've had about 4, which I'm very unique for my age. And they're very diverse, but I started off with an apprenticeship, and I realised that I don't really have the dextile, is it, what do you call it, the dexterability to do it. It was a motor mechanic fixing cars, but I was able to do it, but not well. What my gift is probably talking. There you go. If anything, that's what I found later in life. But then I built the frame for this painting up here. And found out that I really quite enjoyed doing that, but it's not something I could do full time. We all vary quite immensely, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I've had 3 careers so far.
Your few years, yeah.
I've done logistics and freight forwarding. I worked in emergency response for
in health.
Yeah, well, in literal natural disasters, in emergency response.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought would be an interesting life-changing experience, but it was too horrific for me, so I mad props to those who do it. And then I did this business when I came back, and opportunities and sort of feeling what you want to do with your life and accepting that you're allowed to change. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but it's having the confidence
and that's
in
where
your
I
abilities.
think it was a good coaching to say to my daughter that she could have 5 different careers, and I think it's right. And I think you should change. I think it's really good. It's life-changing because everything changes completely, but it's exciting. I think you're going to have an exciting life in terms of work.
I hope so. I'm enjoying it so far. I really enjoyed the fact that no 2 days are the same, even though we're doing what's supposed to be same work. But because we have so many clients for everyone's staff. And
now, you say you enjoy it. In my world, in my generation, you went to work. You didn't go there to enjoy it. And the other factor was you used to have 8 hours in your own time to enjoy it. You're supposed to do 8 hours work, 8 hours enjoyment, and then 8 hours sleep. What do you do for entertainment? Or what do you think the new world... You don't have to disclose all your personal
it's fine.
interests. You might have some wacky
I just
ones.
first wanted to touch base back on what we were talking about with resilience.
Oh, yes.
Because everyone who goes in through university, and especially when they're teaching where you can end up, they always go at the top level, which is the CEOs and those who are already like partially stopped working. You know, they're there to manage the people and to make sure that at the end of the day they're streamlining and they're doing their job with a high quality, right? But what people don't really understand when you're first graduating is that it's not going to happen overnight to get to that CEO position. You do actually have to go and do the grunge work, paperboy, or I mean, Walt Disney was a paperboy, or the mail in an office, or just, you know, customer service department, and that's where a lot of the resilience conversation comes in, and the expectations that the youth have to enjoy what they're doing comes in, and it's the hierarchy of needs. They sit there, and it's not so much that they don't enjoy the work. They sit there and they're like, why am I not a CEO yet? I've been working for 2 months. Where is my CEO position? You know, and it's I don't know if there's been a cultural shift, but that was definitely what was going on when I was in university.
You know the answer to that, it is, why don't you start your own business and get on your own? And that's what I'd like to see more of.
It's even harder, though.
Well,
it's 14-hour work days for very little, and then when you get staff, you kind of have to make sure that they have bread first.
It's harder, I do agree, but it's not hard to start a business. It's really easy. But you have to work hard, and you have to do multi-skill, because you need to know how to gain more work, how to please your clients, how to please your workers. You have to know a lot of things, and you learn
but then you have help with virtual administrators. But no, you do still have to
breaking into an adverb.
Well, you do still have to understand why you're doing what you're doing in your business, the systems, like why it's important to make sure that your client, especially if you're in trades, knows what you're about to do to their house instead of just doing it, and other things like that.
Struggles of youth in entertainment, young lady. Explain.
I think that work is a big part of life, money, making sure that you have it, but also having the ability to find other people. COVID really showcased that, because especially people who, you know, 6 people to one house, they never, it was a place to hold your stuff and sleep. For the rest of the time, you usually were supposed to be going out, meeting people, going to parties, living life, even going on hikes if you're not really party inclined with a group of people. And especially with the borders closing right now, I think that a lot of the youth are leaving because bars that used to be barely open till 3 are now closing at 11. You know, it's work is important, but it's not everything. And when you're in that youth stage and you're exploring, your priorities are to find girlfriends and boyfriends, or to find
life partners.
Good stories. You know,
that
drunk night we had the other day. You know, and stories that sort of shape and form who you are, which we don't have. And it was hard when we were. It was hard to compete on the international scale when we did have our borders open and COVID wasn't there and everything was going well. But now people are just, you know.
Well, you know, I have to agree to some extent with that, because I think COVID's changed everything, and it's not a generation thing. But in my lifetime, we gathered together collectively more often than I think you guys do. Well, I'm saying that in my experience watching my daughter, who spends a lot of time on her keyboard, and because that's a lot of way. I think the people today are more cocooning, and I say cocooning because they surround themselves in their own little environment and then socialise from there on the screen, and that's really not you've got to get together physically.
I think it's a huge problem in the mental health. We are tribe mentality people. We want to interact with the people we have in our communities. We want to go out and have a drink. And just because you're social media with chatting with someone else, you're not getting the same experience. You're not feeling the feelings, having the good times.
So, I mean, what you're saying is that since COVID, it's pretty much, it's harder than it was prior to COVID.
I think it's not just COVID. I think that the borders for us and the the lockdowns lifted a little too late. The rest of the world is completely back to normal. It's not even an option with masks. It's like, if you want, if you don't, don't. Bars and things are completely running back to normal, and we're so far from that. It's actually quite astounding.
Well, you say New Zealand's behind the rest of the world?
Yeah,
I do agree.
Yeah.
Looking at Britain, they just party mad. We're having a great time, and look, they couldn't wait to get back, and then they were in the groups of hundreds.
I want my pint, yeah, and that was fine, and that's what the youth of New Zealand is looking at. They're looking at the fact that, I'd rather take a stray bullet in America, but at least it means that I can go out, or in London, and say I'd rather deal with the strikes and the lack of trains, but at least I'll get to go walk to my corner pub. Well,
Elena, in my day, going to London was just party time because it was wide open. But coming from Eltham, we had 3 pubs, and it was a different world. And we thought we had a reasonable social life. They only really had a party time once a week, and I worked shift work, so I remember that was even harder. It was once every 6 weeks I could go out and socialise. And so admittedly, we'd gather just a group of us guys and have beers during the week. But go to London, and the place was open. The bars are open till all night and whatever. So it's changed.
Well, we have our challenges. You can't, go to Paris for the weekend, because for us it's a 24-hour flight. For London, it's a train for an hour and a half. It's a very different environment, and they can go explore the rest of the world, and they can have this excitement outside of their country.
So do you think it's a culture thing, or is it a thing we're just not facilitating it? Because the culture thing is, I saw it in my day, and it's still around today. New Zealand is not as sociable as perhaps the US and Europe and Britain.
We rely really heavily on house parties and parties that are made by friends and friends of friends, which means getting out of your bubble and going to meet random strangers in a pub and just having a chat, or a yarn as it's called, is so much harder. Add in that COVID, people are really
scared,
resistant to inviting people into their homes now because they don't want to be a quarantine site. And parties are happening few and far between. And at least with my network, a lot of the single people are leaving because they're like, I'm not going to be able to find a partner here. The couples are still saying, the couples are thinking of, moving on. But
Elena, I've really enjoyed this because you've opened my eyes in many areas I wasn't aware of, and I got to thank you for that. I think this recording we've just done is actually very interesting, and we've heard dynamics. I mean, I haven't given you the appreciation during the video as you deserve for this, because I think you have really opened my eyes in terms of lots of stuff. But next week you're coming back, and I believe we're going to be talking healthcare. Now wait for this, folks, wait for this. This is the issues that Elena's raised. Election issues, DHB changes, GP versus ER. Should we have been locked down for so long? These are controversial things. Medications allowed in New Zealand. What, you're going to touch on some buttons next week, so you're going to be so exciting.
But that was a cheap shot. I didn't know I was coming back next week, folks.
You've got no
I
choice.
Guess so.
If not, I'll go and get her. We'll go to her place and stand outside with the camera rolling. See you then.